So I like to use myself as an example of getting and maintaining the highest possible credit scores possible. As you know, I'm rocking the 850 credit score across the board. I got Experian, TransUnion, I got that 850. I can't do any better than an 850. And it's funny because I don't even have a 100% perfect score in every single grading aspect of my credit, but I still managed to push myself to an 850 credit score. Now, I got a letter in the mail today that was basically saying that MCU wanted to raise my credit limit on a card that I have that I do not even use. Just in full transparency, the card has a $5,000 limit, or I should say had a $5,000 limit. I've never used that card. I just took it and I put it in my safe deposit box. And they wanted to raise the limit to $5,000 more. So that would bring me to a total of $10,000. So the interesting thing to me about that is, considering we're in a financial crisis eve right now, and it prompted me to basically look and see how the banks are doing. And I just noticed that the bank stocks are down. Now, my other credit cards that I typically use all have a $10,000 limit or better. In order for you to get and maintain a perfect 800 plus score, it's really important that you have a couple of cards. You don't have to have too many, but you have to have a couple of cards that add up to about $50,000 worth of credit. And that will give you an excellent credit rating. Or that'll give you, as long, first of all, you have to add up to about 50,000, but you can't actually use that money. You have to make sure that your credit usury is below 5%. I mean, it's okay to temporarily go beyond 5%, but it's better that you have a lot of credit available, but you're never actually using it. And the reason why is because if the banks see you start using a lot of credit, they take it as a sign that you may be putting yourself deep into debt, and now you're a higher risk. So you have to have a lot of credit, but you need to show the bank that you're using your card wisely as a tool to purchase things, and then you're repaying the money immediately. That's why one of my strategies has always been to pay off my credit cards every single other day. Instead of waiting till the end of the month, if you wait till the end of the month, what you're ending up doing is you're running revolving balances. Revolving balances start to get noticed. If you wait beyond a month, you're running a revolving balance. The revolving balance shows the bank that you need this credit and you're probably using it to supplement your income. That's where most Americans go wrong. What they're doing is they're not making enough money, so they use a credit card until the end of the month, and then once they've gotten their end of the month paycheck, they pay the credit card off then. And that's assuming they pay the credit card off. Some of them run the revolving balance to the point where they pay the monthly payment on the credit card, but they don't pay enough to pay it off. When I go purchasing things, just like the bed I just bought for my mother, you got a freaking bed. The thing is over $4,000. You saw it in one of the videos that I made. But anyway, when I buy stuff, I usually will see whether or not I can use a credit card to buy it to get points. And then I'll also see if they give me at least 12 months of 0% interest. As long as you pay off whatever you're purchasing within that period of time, there's no interest. So if you buy something that's $4,000, it will be exactly $4,000 as long as you pay it off before the 12 months is over. If you wait beyond the 12 months, now you're going to have interest tacked on, and it's going to cost you more than $4,000. And because the Federal Reserve is now raising interest rates, beyond the $4,000 could be anything. It could be a couple of $100. But why pay more if you don't have to? So that's how I keep my credit spotless. That's how I've built my credit score to where it's been. My Apple Card I use specifically for my cars. What is it called? The warranties, extended warranties. Yeah, I put that on my Apple Card, pay that off immediately when the charge is made. My Capital One Venture, as you know, I use that for just about every purchase I make. And I use that to collect rewards points so that this way on the next vacation I go on, I'll be able to cash those reward points in, and I'll be able to pay off whatever condo or whatever resort or whatever it is. And I'll just use the reward points as basically free money from the spending that I had to do anyway. And that's the strategy. You have to have yourself a strategy. Some people don't travel. Some people use credit cards because they eat out a lot. They like to dine out a lot. Some people don't like to travel. Some people rent cars all the time. I don't know. Everybody does something different. Some people are into extreme sports and stuff. Some people just like going to the movies. I don't know. Whatever your kink is, that's fine. It's such that you have to have a credit card strategy. But the best things you can always remember, make sure you pay your credit cards off every single other night. $0 balance. Make sure you do not run revolving balances. Make sure that you're not paying annual fees, and make sure that as time goes on that you're building up your credit as much as you can. Here's an article from Forbes, and these are the people who are supposed to be smarter than I am. Why the Fed needs to crush the economy and job market in order to save them. That sounds ominous. It's understandable if you're completely confused about the job market and economy. The reason why you feel in the dark is because the reasons may seem counterintuitive. The Federal Reserve Bank, the entity controlling the United States money supply, has to make the economy worse before it can get better. Fed Chair Jerome Powell openly admits that the economy needs to be cooled down to fight inflation. Bear in mind, Powell and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen missed the mark, claiming inflation was only transitory and would subdue after a while. It didn't ebb and has hit 40-year record highs. The U.S. government messed up. The bigger it gets, the harder it falls. One of the Fed's only tools now is to hike interest rates, which makes buying a home with a mortgage, using credit cards, or seeking loans to start a business much more expensive. The result is that people will opt out of purchasing homes, cut down on spending, forego starting a business, and companies will lay off workers and enact hiring freezes. And let me just say this. When I was a kid, interest rates were about 10%. That was during the 80s, obviously. High interest rates are actually healthier for the economy, and the reason why is very simple. It's because the only people who are going to take out loans are very cautious and they're very thoughtful about the loans they're taking out. The higher your interest rates, the more likely people have to be careful about what they're taking out and what they're spending. But when you have 0% interest rates, well, suddenly taking out a student loan so that I can get an underwater basket weaving liberal arts degree, suddenly that becomes a good idea. Suddenly taking out a student loan so I can major in women's studies becomes a good idea. Suddenly, if I don't make that much money a month, suddenly taking out money to buy a brand new BMW makes more sense when the interest rates are low. Interest rates being high is a check and a balance against the moral hazard of poor spending decisions. As you can see, this economy has grown on low interest rates. This economy has grown on irresponsible spending. The American people don't want higher interest rates. They want to be able to run out and buy whatever they want just because they want it. But the reality is the Federal Reserve at this point has no choice but to raise interest rates. So anyway, where am I? The government flooding the economy with trillions of dollars while not taking immediate action to cut off inflation before it raged left the Fed with few other choices that brought down the economy, causing high unemployment. The cold theory is that you won't spend money if you don't have a job, and the economy will contract. The argument against this theory is that employment is still high and businesses can't find enough workers. There are over 11 million jobs available and 2 roles for each one individual seeking a role. The consumer will keep spending in a tight job market, saving the day. However, recent layoff announcements are pulling away the foundation from a house of cards. The widely reported 2 jobs open for every 1 person seeking a new role isn't exactly accurate. People assume that there is a direct match between open roles and job hunters who either possess the requisite skills or are interested in the type of positions available. If you are a tax accountant looking for a new role, having 2 bartender jobs available isn't very helpful. Another fallacy is saying that it's a hot job market. Not every sector is in demand. If you are a software engineer, you'll be sought after. On the other hand, waiters, bartenders, warehouse workers, and other frontline workers are desperately needed. However, many of these folks don't want these type of jobs and plan to pivot out of their respective industries. They desire roles that aren't backbreaking and don't require being on your feet all day and dealing with abusive customers. This is one of the reasons why the jobs are still open. People don't want those jobs. Let's see, startups and layoffs was, let's get to something more important. The good times are turning bad. Yeah, no shit. Jobless claims for the week ending July 15 increased to 251,000. Okay. What is a recession? Gee, I thought we knew. Recession means to recede. It basically means shit pulls back. A bright spot. There could be a bright spot. Next week, the Fed is anticipated to hike interest rates for the 4th time in 2022. Its expectation is that unemployment will slowly rise from around 3.6 to 4.1 by 2024. Fuck. Fend for yourself. In these challenging times, people must also take personal actions to safeguard their jobs and finances. So basically, this is where you're concerned. Go into the office to be seen and make yourself indispensable. So they basically are saying, get ready to kiss your boss's ass, lick his balls, kiss his feet, whatever it takes to keep your job. Stay in close touch with your network to compare notes on what's happening and seek out job leads. Find folks who can give you an entree into companies that are doing well. Update your resume and LinkedIn profile. Find recruiters who specialize in your space who can keep an eye open for opportunities. Save your money. Save your money. Don't take too much risk with your investments in stocks or cryptos. Lastly, avoid adjustable interest rate debt that could quickly escalate. Thank you. So that last paragraph, I'm probably going to use that. Because most people would say, well, what should I do? What do I do? Oh, the market's fucked. What should I do? So basically, these are the things that they're saying to do. The bottom line really to me is get out of debt, stay out of debt. Because the less debt you have, the better you'll be as you go through the storm and the better you'll be as you come out of the storm. Now, for some people, that's easy. For some people, that's probably not so easy. If you're a person who's in need of a car, don't go out there and buy some shit you can't afford. I understand how much you hate these shitty economy cars. I understand. Believe me, I understand. Now, I know it seems kind of hypocritical for me to be telling you to just go out and buy an economy car when I'm about to buy a $70,000 Cadillac that plugs into my house. But the bottom line is you have to act frugally. So if you know that you don't make that much money, don't go out and buy something you can't afford. Get yourself, dare I say it, a Nissan Altima or a Honda Accord or a Toyota Camry or something. And you might as well just get it fully loaded. This way, even though it sucks and you're going to be in this piece of shit for a while, at least you'll have all the nice necessities like heated and cooled seats and stuff. Maybe even all-wheel drive if you're lucky. But don't try to go out there and buy a fucking BMW 5 Series that's used. Don't go out there and try to buy a used 7 Series. Don't go out there and try to buy some used Mercedes S-Class. Please don't do that to yourself. Because you're just going to end up on that long list of people right now who are dodging Operation Repo's repossession trucks that are looking to put a boot on your car and then take that shit away and take it back to the bank where it belongs, since you never should have had it in the first place. Don't go out there and try to buy a fucking Dodge Challenger or Charger. Don't go, I know, what is it? Chrysler said they have a E85 Challenger coming with 909 horsepower. Please don't try to buy something like that if you know that your job is at risk. Please don't do that. Because you're just going to look like a fool when they come and pick that fucking thing up from in front of your house and take it back to the bank. Don't do that to yourself. Get yourself something economical, something you can afford, something that you won't take a major hit just in case, things go tits up. And, please don't go out there and try to buy something flashy, because this is not the time for that shit. And yes, I know it's hypocritical for me to say that, because the first thing somebody's going to say, oh, well, you went out and you bought an SRT. You went out and you bought a gas guzzler. You're about to buy a Cadillac that is fucking $70,000 and it plugs into the side of your house and shit. Yes. I know it sounds hypocritical, but you have to understand, I have more money than you in most cases. I know some of you make good money, but the majority of you, according to these economic conditions that I'm reading about, don't. So don't try to keep up with the Joneses. I'm the Joneses. Don't try to keep up with me, because if you try to keep up with me, it's not good. You're just going to be seeing taillights, because it's just not a good thing. Just don't do it. Get yourself something nice and economical. Go get one of them fully loaded fucking. Go get one of them Kia K5s or some shit. Or if you need a house, get yourself if you can get a house, because right now it's crazy. But if you got to get a place to live and you think you can afford the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and the utilities, get something economical. If you can absolutely afford a $300,000 house, don't shop for a $300,000 house. Get something that's $250,000. So you give yourself $50,000 of buffer. If you can afford a $500,000 house, don't go for a $500,000 house. Look for a $300,000 house. Live beneath your means. That's what this article is telling you to do. I just summarized this whole thing for you. It's saying, get out of debt, stay out of debt. You've got to live, but you don't have to try to live high on the hog, because the higher on the hog you try to live, you're fucked. Now, speaking of buying a house, New York Post put this story out July 20th, 2022. Chinese spent $6.1 billion on U.S. real estate last year. First of all, I'm not going to read this entire story, but I'm just using this to round out the rest of this little hour of chat that I'm having with you about the market. And I've mentioned this before, but let me just explain the way this works. Each and every time you spend money and you buy something that on the bottom of it says made in China, you're actually helping to create this problem that's ultimately going to bite you in the ass in the future. So it works like this. Federal Reserve is printing money. Federal Reserve hands you a stimulus check, welfare check. You take that welfare check, that stimulus welfare check, you take that money, you go buy a PlayStation 5. Your PlayStation 5, I want you to take a good long look at your PlayStation 5 right now. Or your Xbox Series X or whatever the fuck they call it. Or your television. You see that big 50-inch television in your room that was $300? Guess where all that shit is made? All of it was made in China. Take a look at the light bulbs in your room. Take a look at your vacuum cleaner. Take a look at your desk. Take a look at your bed. The majority of this stuff is made in China. So the way it works is this. When you buy stuff that's made in China, your money goes to China. Now, here's the problem, though. In China, they can't really make use of the American dollar. The Chinese government suppresses the cost of the yuan. And I think right now the yuan is like 6.6 or something, and they keep it low. When I was in China in 2001 and 2003, the yuan had an exchange rate of like 8.6275 or something like that. But they've dropped it to 6. Now, by keeping it locked like that, what they're doing is they're making businesses more likely to want to come to China, because for them it's cheaper to build in China and then ship the stuff elsewhere than it is for them to build in their own countries. It's the exact same reason why BMW will build factories in America rather than just keep the factories in Germany. It's because it's actually more expensive for them to build it there, pay their workers, and then ship it here. It's cheaper for them to build here. However, that probably has changed because the cost of the euro is now on parity with the dollar. So in the last, what is it, like 23 years, the euro was more expensive than the dollar. But because of the Ukraine-Russia situation and the stupid sanctions that backfired on the Europeans and the Americans, well, now the euro is about the same as the dollar, give or take a couple of pennies. So it may actually end up being cheaper in some cases for Europeans to do their business where they are. My point is that when you're sending money to China, those people are saving that money. And when they decide to spend that money, they're not going to spend it on frivolous bullshit. They're not going to waste that money over there. No, 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 no. They're going to invest in houses abroad, specifically America. Now, some of that money will also go to buy stuff in Africa, and some of that money will also go to buy stuff elsewhere. But the point is, they're not going to spend the money in China. They're going to spend that money where American dollars are accepted. What that's going to do is that's going to drive up prices locally. So this is what's happening right now. If you try to buy a house, especially in this area, New York City, you're going to, let's say you see a house. You're going to bid on that house. Let's say the house is worth $700,000, which it's probably not, but let's say it is. Let's say you bid, okay, I'll bid $710,000. The Chinese are going to roll up with a bag of money, and they're going to say, no, we'll give you $800,000. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Where did y'all get all that money from? Where the fuck did y'all get a suitcase full of money? Well, guess what? You know where they got that suitcase of money? They got it from you. Because you bought your $500 80-inch television. You bought your $500 PlayStation. You bought your $500 Xbox. You bought your $1,000 Galaxy Samsung phone. All of this stuff was made there. So they've been holding that money. They've been saving that money. And what they'll do is they come to your neighborhood, buy your stores, buy your houses. And not only do they buy the house for themselves, but they'll buy that house for their kids because they're smart enough to say, you know what? Let's buy our kids a house so that they don't need to have a mortgage. And now they've bought up they buy up your whole block. And it's not just them. I'm not going to single them out. Indians do it too. Indian Americans, they do it too. We're sending money to India. That money's coming right back. We're sending money to Saudi Arabia. We're sending money to oil-producing countries, OPEC. And guess what? Once they get that money, they're coming here to buy up every goddamn thing. So your housing market, you're going to end up renting in your own housing market. And I've said this before. I'm so thankful that I was smart enough to buy property before COVID. Because once COVID hit, and the Fed start raising these interest rates, they have basically made it virtually impossible for these Generation Z kids to buy a house. They've basically made it impossible. These kids are going to be nothing but permanent future renters. I can look above myself right now, and I've got a ceiling fan. And I'm thankful to God for my ceiling and my ceiling fan. Above all else, I'm thankful to Jesus and God that I've got a ceiling fan because I own this property and nobody can tell me a motherfucking thing. Like, you know how in some of your apartments, I go over to my friend's house and he's in an apartment and you got to be quiet and shit. When you walk in, you can't step too hard. You can't make too much noise and shit. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are you paying rent here or not? But it's an apartment, and somebody else may complain that you're making too much noise. Not in my house. I can scream. I can go in my backyard right now. I can light off fucking fireworks just because I fucking feel like it. And nobody can do shit. I could go in my backyard right now and decide, you know what? I feel like pulling out my grill at 10 o'clock p.m. and cooking something. You know, some people might try to complain, like one of these fucking vegans might try, oh, yeah, well, you know, that's against the Homeowners Alliance rule. You can't be cooking that meat because I might smell the meat and the meat might get into my nose. Well, guess what? I got a fucking house. I got a backyard. I got a front yard. I got another house with a backyard, a front yard. I can go out there right now and I can, oh, you got vegan neighbors? I can fry up a cow and they can't say a motherfucking thing. That's what it means to be free, and that's what it means to be an owner. But here's the problem, though. This situation that they've created, it's going to be hard as fuck for Generation Z to be owners of anything. How are they going to own anything when a mortgage is going to cost them $3,000 or $4,000 a month? How's that possible? It's not. And not only that, marriage is down, dating is down. Without that second income, they ain't buying nothing. So the story was about foreign money specifically. Now they're pointing to China. They're talking about China. What they don't usually do is they don't usually talk about Indian money and they don't talk about Saudi Arabian money buying shit, but they usually do poke at the Chinese. So that's what this story is about. Buyers from mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong spend an average of over $1 million per transaction to purchase existing homes. So just think about that. They spent an average of over $1 million per purchase of existing homes, with nearly a third of those deals, 31%, involving the acquisition of property in California, according to the NAR. Canada came in second. Investors based north of the border spent $5.5 billion on U.S. residential properties between April of last year and March of this year. Now, there's also a reason for that. Canada's mortgages are not like America's mortgages. Canada's mortgages, first of all, there's not that many Canadians. There's more people in California than there are in Canada. The things that I learned about the Canadian mortgage system selling houses was that their houses actually still, in many cases, their mortgage system has balloon payments, prepayment penalties, which is something we pretty much got rid of down here. Their housing is centered around their major cities. A large amount of Canada has like nothing in it except freaking wilderness. And a lot of them have been buying this direction because their houses are way more expensive in some cases. Not only that, it's also harder for them to afford the mortgages, especially when you have the economic downturn. This is one of the reasons why you see Chrysler, Stellantis pushing so hard to sell these cars here, because these cars are made in Canada. When you buy a Hellcat, a Canadian gets his wings, basically. So anyway. Buyers from India, $3.6 billion. Oh, so they did mention India. Mexico, $2.9 billion. Brazil, $1.6 billion. So as you can see, the Chinese outspent the Indians, but the Indians still, the Chinese and the Canadians outspent the Indians. But India is still buying, because first of all, in this country, the Indian Americans are actually the most richest foreigner group in this country. Indian Americans. Not Native Americans, India, over there next to Pakistan and Bangladesh. Okay, so Florida was the state that attracted the heaviest volume of real estate purchases, according to figures provided by the NAR. Florida accounted for 24% of all international real estate purchases in the U.S., while California ranked second, 11%. Texas attracted 8%. Part of the reason is because of the lower taxes. Arizona, I was rubbing my nose. Arizona accounted for 7%. New York and North Carolina were tied at 4%. In total, foreign buyers spent $59 billion to purchase 98,600 existing homes in the U.S., an 8.5% increase from the previous 12-month period. Of those purchases, 44% were all cash sales. All cash! 44%. So when I say the Chinese roll up with a bag of money, a bag of cash, this is what I'm talking about, 44%. I was telling my aunt, you've got a brownstone. First of all, you're getting old. Your hips are old. Your knees are old. Your feet are old. Getting up and down those steps in these high-rise brownstones, that shit has to be killing you, literally killing you. I was like, listen, all you got to do is just put a sign on the front of your house in Chinese. I'll write it for you, that and put Christmas lights around it that says that $4 million buys this house. Now, her house is only worth about 2, possibly 3. But I would just raise that number. Shit, I'd put 5 on there. Fuck it. If you want it, buy it. If you don't want it, just keep moving. So I'd say, yes, listen, in Chinese, $5 million buys this house. And I guarantee you, the Chinese are going to roll up in a Rolls Royce or something like that with a bag of money, and you will get your $5 million, and they want you out of there as soon as possible. And you'll get your $5 million. That's what we're dealing with. And where did they get that $5 million? They got it from you. Look at your PlayStation. Look at your Xbox. Look at that television in your room. Look at all the shit in your house that's not made in America. Thank you very much for giving them the money. So, foreign-based investors were twice as likely to make an all-cash purchase compared to resident foreign buyers. Of course not. The resident foreign buyers they're going to the bank. They're looking for loans. Nearly 6 out of 10 Chinese buyers and 69% of Canadian investors made all-cash purchases. You get my point. So I ask you this. When you're talking about somebody rolling up with between $500,000 and $2 million in cash, I just need you to answer one question for me and I'll shut up. How many millennials in America, how many Generation Z kids in America have between $500,000 and $2 million in cash so that when they spot a house that they want to buy, they don't get outbid by foreign money? The answer to that question is most likely less than 1%. I can't say it's 0. The reason why I say less than 1% is because a lot of these Generation Z and a lot of these millennials, they are making their money on YouTube. But that's a very, very infinitesimally small amount of people. It's not that many people. It's very small. It's less than 1%. So here you've got a house. Now I want you to think about this, and then I'll shut up because I've gone very long. As an American, if I go to the Philippines, I can't buy land there. I can buy a house, but I can't own the land that's under the house. So what most Americans end up doing is if they marry a Filipina, what they'll do is they'll try to build a property, but they know that they'll never be able to own the land. Now, me personally, I'm not building shit in foreign fucking soil. If I go over to another country, I'll rent a condo, but there's no way I'm building and investing if I can't own it. If I go to China, I can't own land in China either. If I go to China, if I try to even open up a business, it has to be a joint venture because they're not going to let me just buy and own. If I tried to go to Japan, same shit. They're not going to let me buy and own. If I go to India, same shit. They're not going to let me buy and own it. So who the fuck set up these rules that allows foreigners to come here and buy shit from under our own noses? You tell me that answer to that question, please. Who allowed the foreign people of the world to tell us that we can't go to their country and buy property and land, but they can come here and buy property and land? Please explain that shit to me. I would just like to take a very quick look at the stock market. And I have my indexes set for, I believe, the last 6 months. Now, I could drop it to the last 3 months, and that will basically yield similar results. Mostly, as you can see, we're mostly in the red. Now, first of all, let me just offer really quickly a simple explanation like this, so this way we don't take too much time understanding what's happening here. The Federal Reserve had interest rates set extremely low for a very long time. The problem with having your interest rates very low is that it's akin to printing money. When you print money, you cause inflation because what you're doing is you're expanding the money supply. With interest rates at 0, housing mortgages at extremely low, what is it, 3% or less. You had car loans, auto loans extremely low. And then you enter into this area where we had COVID-19 quarantines and lockdowns, and the government insisted on printing out welfare checks, seeming as if they wanted to try to pump up the stock market or they wanted to try to increase consumer demand, when what we should have done was decreased consumer demand. Well, what we've basically done is we've created a situation where there's short supply on certain items in certain sectors, high demand, and you're seeing it just about everywhere. Now, gasoline and oil, there really isn't low supply. Gasoline and oil, there's plenty of it to go around. What the government basically does is they manipulate gasoline and oil because they know that the more energy you have, if you control energy, you control the world. Energy, no matter what form it takes, whether it's oil, gas, natural gas, coal, food, energy is the ability to do work. The government wants to keep prices on energy high. They want to keep taxation on energy high. And they know that the more they manipulate it, they can actually control the population. Because when you control food and you control gas and energy, you can actually control the population itself. We entered into this COVID quarantine. We created supply shortages. And then as we're coming out of COVID, what do? We enter into sanctions, economic warfare against Russia. Russia was sending us over 600,000 barrels of oil per day. And we've put sanctions on Russia, which led our gas prices to go sky high. So with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, and they're expected very soon to possibly raise interest rates another 100 basis points, which basically they've already raised it significantly, but they can't raise it too high because America has over $30 trillion of national debt. Once you get too much debt, you end up in a situation where you can't raise interest rates because then it would be impossible for you to service the debt. I asked you to watch a video from Comptroller David Walker when he was interviewed by Glenn Beck. I don't know if you watched it. I hope you did. But the reality is exactly where Comptroller David Walker thought we'd be now is exactly where we are now. So the stock market, and coincidentally, the cryptocurrencies market and the commodities market has all been on a downward trend. So the Dow Jones over the last couple of months has dropped from 34,000 down to 31,000. Now, I believe this is all temporary. Biden is not going to be president very much longer. If he resigns come November because he's afraid that the Republicans are going to be in power, a supermajority, and they're going to impeach him over his son, that's one reason why he might be on his way out. The other possibility is his health. He's an old man. He's got COVID-19, supposedly. He's fallen off bicycles. So the thing about it is, one way or another, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, they could try to prove me wrong, it seems to me that his days in office are numbered, and it's possible Kamala Harris is going to end up being president. Now, whether that happens or not, he's a one-term president. If he runs in 2024, he's going to lose. I don't believe he's going to run in 2024, and I also don't believe Kamala Harris is going to run in 2024. You see, nationwide, people are disgusted with the Democrats. I'm unfortunate in that here in New York, my Governor Cuomo got put out of office or was forced to resign. They brought in this moron Hochul. And since you're dealing with mostly liberals and Democrat voters and women, it's a very good possibility Hochul's going to win. I would prefer Zeldin, but the thing about it is New York politics are mostly liberal. That doesn't go the same for the rest of this country. The rest of this country, I believe, is moving towards the Republican Party, especially with the newest polls that show Hispanics and Asians, which ironically are the only two groups, according to the last census, that are actually showing positive growth. Blacks have fallen behind. Whites have fallen behind. Hispanics and Asians are the only two groups, according to the last census, that are showing positive growth. So with them moving towards the Republican Party, I believe that ultimately a Democrat doesn't stand a chance in 2024. So the Republicans look like they're about to take the House and the Senate, and if that happens, Biden may be impeached. But I believe before that could happen, Biden would probably step down. Kamala Harris will step into office. She'll be a lame duck. That's a very good possibility considering where we are now. But then again, you never know what the future could hold. Anything could happen between now and November. So as far as this stock market, the important thing to understand here is that as these interest rates are rising, it's creating a negative feedback loop where what's happening is prices are going up. The price of debt is going up. The price of credit is going up. And basically people are shopping less. I was in Walmart. I was in Home Depot the other day. I go in Walmart, I go in Home Depot, I go in Costco, I go in BJ's. There's fewer and fewer people there shopping. I've seen this before. I saw this in 2008, 2009, when we had the financial crisis of 2008 caused by subprime mortgages. I saw the exact same things happening. The government, basically, along with the banks, they stopped offering out credit. Interest rates back then, they basically stopped just giving you free credit for the most part. Some people found it harder to get credit. People who were already wealthy and didn't need it, they found it easy to get credit. That's why they call it a K-shaped recovery. Rich people get richer, poor people get poorer, so forth and so on. So here you've got fewer people shopping. Fewer people shopping means that more stores are likely to end up closing because stores do not close when consumer demand is high. But the problem is consumer demand is low. You're already hearing them talking about the possibility, first of all, unemployment going up, foreclosures might go up, and then they're also talking about auto loan defaults rising. And they're also, AT&T is claiming, do I have AT&T on here? AT&T is claiming that there's people not paying their goddamn phone bills. So AT&T is literally claiming that they're losing, what is it? AT&T right here warns that customers are slower to pay their monthly bills. I've been an AT&T customer since I got iPhone. That was back in 2007, and I've been with them since then. I've basically been paying them $100 a month to keep this fucking thing on. So now you're starting to see people possibly defaulting on car loans, which they never should have had in the first place. Because as I've mentioned, a lot of these people, they were getting their car loans thanks to the fact they got stimulus welfare checks, and they went out and they bought cars that they couldn't afford. Well, defaults are going up on just about everything. And even AT&T is telling you, it's like, these people aren't even paying the little bills. What makes you think they're going to pay the big bills? Now, there are certain companies that I don't have a problem investing with. Apple and all of my other stocks in my personal index, Mangoat, I don't have a problem investing with them because I know Apple has a year-over-year strategy for their stock. They release their products throughout the year, but specifically focus in September. New iPhones, new iPad, new Apple Watch, so forth and so on. Apple's products sell. The demand is high. And that's just that. So I'm not worried about Apple, and I'm not worried about Apple's dividend. NVIDIA, as you saw, criminal Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Congress, they're sharing their insider trading tips, and they're buying NVIDIA. In fact, Nancy Pelosi, according to Dr. Wilma Leon on his show, he was talking about the fact that Nancy Pelosi was planning to take a trip to Taiwan. I have to wonder if that had anything to do with her stock holdings in NVIDIA Taiwan Semiconductors, or if they were just doing that to piss off the Chinese government. Regardless what it was, you'll never know. But considering the fact she and her husband are busy trading stock tips and, buying stocks that you got to remember, I was telling you to buy NVIDIA a whole year ago. The reason why was because I knew NVIDIA, AMD, Microsoft, I knew all of them were going to have to come up with strategies in order to make sure that they have as many chips as possible for their devices. Apple was the smartest. Apple started building their own chips, the M1, the M2, And the thing about Apple is Apple's already ahead of the game. And that's one of the reasons why Apple is such a powerful and obviously rich company. How much is Apple worth? Apple's worth $2.49 trillion. So, yeah, Apple is doing pretty goddamn well. NVIDIA is worth, what is this, $431 billion. Give NVIDIA 5 years, they're going to be $1 trillion by that time. And it's obvious why. It's because the demand has been so high for their product. And it's funny because ironically, when it comes to all these tech companies, most of the demand for them was built around cell phones, laptops, computers, and even cryptocurrency. Now, look at what's happening with the crypto market. One of the things you have to understand about the crypto market, and I've said this 100 times, for these poor people who think that just by buying a couple of Bitcoin that they're suddenly going to get to the moon, what they don't seem to understand is that the market conditions needed for Bitcoin to have gotten close to 70,000, never even reached 70,000. Those market conditions don't exist right now. They don't exist anymore. The Federal Reserve, by raising interest rates, has made money more expensive. The days of 0% interest are probably over for a long time because now we all see that if the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates to zero, we see that all it does is sets us up for an inflationary or even a stagflationary environment down the block. So these people who are buying Bitcoin, they don't seem to understand that they're setting themselves. And by the way, I usually talk negative about cryptocurrency, but let me say it like this and just be objective. Cryptocurrency, the dips aren't over. If we're really headed towards Federal Reserve rate hikes and we're possibly heading into a recession, which the government doesn't even want to admit, I believe we've been there for years. But if we are headed into a recession or stagflation, what's going to happen is the stock market is going to have even more violent dips in certain sectors, and cryptocurrency is one of them because the people who've put money into cryptocurrency are going to withdraw their money because they suddenly see themselves needing it. See, in the good old days, a couple of years ago, it was easy for people to say, yeah, I'm going to put part of my paycheck into these cryptocurrency Bitcoins, Dogecoin, Shiba. I'm going to put part of my paycheck into this every month, and I'm going to build up my portfolio that way. Right now, these guys can't do that. Gasoline prices are killing them. Energy costs in their house is killing them. Food costs have risen. Eggs, like you try to buy a dozen eggs, it's like $4 right now. The highest I ever remember eggs being was like $1.99. And even that was high. I think the lowest I remembered it within the last year was like $1.39. Food prices are up. Gas prices are up. These people are losing money left and right. In fact, it's gotten so bad that now you see these news companies keep coming up with new words. For instance, jumping off of inflation. Inflation basically means that you increase the money supply and that causes the price of goods and services to increase and go up. They're coming up with new words like shrinkflation, which means that you're buying the same product you always buy, but you're getting less of it. So let's say if you buy some toilet tissue, you're getting less toilet tissue. If you buy a bag of chips, you're getting less chips. Have you seen the price of bags of chips now? Lay's, Ruffles. This shit, the bag's like fucking $5.50 or $6 now. And I'm like, well, why did the price on chips go up? I thought potatoes were cheap. But that's just what happens. So they came up with this word, shrinkflation. Then I saw in Indian news we own, they came up with a new word. They've got heatflation. They're saying what happens when the price of stuff goes up just because of the heat. So they're coming up with new words, heatflation, shrinkflation. It's all really inflation, but they keep coming up with new words. I'm like, yeah, what's next? So the crypto market is in trouble. Sooner or later, there's going to be another major dip. Now, the people who are buying Bitcoin right now because they think it's quote unquote on sale, they're going to be, they're going to be shocked because it could very easily drop down to $15,000 or $10,000, which a lot of the economists believe that's going to happen simply because they really think that it hasn't hit bottom. Even at 17,000, they think it hasn't hit bottom. If that happens, the rest of these things would be they'd be virtually rendered worthless. Now, a lot of the rest of the market is hurting. Facebook, I'm glad to see they're bleeding, but pretty much all of the market is hurting. But what I would advise is that for people who did want to get into the stock market and they did want to buy shares out of their favorite long-standing companies, this is definitely a good time to buy. Even though it's still up from where it was in March 2020, it's still a good time to buy. I bought, like, for instance, with these stocks in 2008, I bought Ford at $1.70. And then during March 2020, it dropped down to $5. I bought more. These automobile manufacturers, all of them are on sale right now. Stellantis, GM, Rivian, and Lucid. All these guys, all of these things are on sale right now. The Chinese ones, Candy, Neoli, XPEV, these things are definitely still on sale because the Chinese market is hurting right now. There's news that some of the rural banks in China are failing. That's partially because of the lockdowns that they've been doing, and also because of their real estate market has skyrocketed beyond what some people can afford to pay, and so forth and so on. Chinese government will figure it out. They'll figure it out. I have more faith in the Chinese government than I do in the American government, to tell you the truth. The Chinese government, they'll game out a plan and they'll just get it done. No Republicans, no Democrats, they'll just get it done. A lot of these other companies like Alibaba is going to remain down until the Chinese economy comes back. And the problem ultimately is that the Chinese economy is so intertwined with the American economy because, the majority of your shit is made in fucking Shenzhen, China, that as long as China's hurting, America's going to be hurting. So this whole situation between China, Russia, and the U.S., I read a story written by a Taiwanese journalist where they're saying that China may declare war on Taiwan just so they can distract from the other issues that they have in their economy. I hope that's not true, but hey, it could be. Lockheed Martin has dropped from 458. It was at a high of 479, and it dropped down right now to 394. Lockheed Martin's going to be pushing those F-35s, trying to sell F-35s to all of Europe. Buying an F-35 is like buying a Lamborghini. The maintenance kills you. Flying one of those damn things for an hour costs you like $10,000 in maintenance. Europeans don't want those things, but they're afraid of Russia. So the longer this war goes on between Russia and Ukraine and America, basically, the more the Europeans get worried and the more they, fall towards trying to buy these overpriced weapon systems by Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and so forth and so on. So, if you wanted Lockheed Martin, well, if you're willing to spend $400 a share, then they're on sale. Same goes for Raytheon, and Boeing is still on sale. Boeing, again, you put your money in Boeing, it'll come back eventually, because you got to remember, anybody wants to get onto a plane in America, for the most part, it's a Boeing airplane. Airbus is everywhere else, and I prefer Airbus. Boeing planes fucking suck. It's like I've yet to get on a Boeing plane I like. The 747 is far below the A380, and the 777X, the 787, those things are, in my opinion, not as good as the A350 ULR Airbus. So no, no thank you. If it's Boeing, I ain't going. What else? I did want to point out the fact that I've noticed that the banks are down. Now, the reason why the banks are down is obviously because of fewer loans. When you say fewer loans, we're saying, okay, people are taking out fewer home loans simply because the price on these homes is so high and the interest rates are so high. For example, there's a house on my old block that I was looking at. House is worth less than $200,000 in real terms. Unfortunately, because that house is in this market and because it has apparently been made into a legal 2-family home, they want $750,000 for it. If you buy a house with a $750,000 mortgage at a 5% interest rate, which is that's the lowest you could pretty much get unless you're buying down points. You're looking at a $4,000 a month mortgage by itself, never mind the taxes, insurance, and the utilities. Now, the problem with that is these single family homes that are being chopped up into multi-story, multi-family dwellings, the problem is you have to charge those two families so much money to live in there. Like if it's a $4,000 mortgage, you're going to have to charge them like $2,500 a month. But guess what? You're charging $2,500 a month basically to rent one floor of the house. And all that does is drive up the population on the block, and it makes living there unbearable. And ultimately, that's the reason why the Democrats can't make any progress in Long Island. It's because Long Island has been segregated so long, and we have lovely houses, lots of space. Long Island does not want to see Long Island turn into what New York City turned onto. So when any of these stupid fucking Democrats try that, we want to get rid of single family housing, basically Long Island just tell them to go fuck themselves. And not only that, they don't want Democrats moving out of here because they don't want them trying to change any of the laws. They don't want them changing any of the gun laws. They don't want them changing any of the zoning laws, nothing. So the Democrats can keep that bullshit right in the city with all the crime and population, the sanctuary city nonsense, and all the illegal immigration. They can keep that bullshit there. I'm a Long Islander right now, but I've got a house in Queens too. So it's like, my thing is, y'all keep that bullshit over there. I'm going to keep my shit over here. Like, you see this AR-15 right here? I can have this thing right here. I can't have that inside the city because the fucking Democrats got problems. So my thing is, my rights out here supersede all that bullshit they got going over there in the city. So they keep that nonsense. But I'm getting off topic. As far as these banks go, these banks are making fewer loans. What I've noticed that they're doing, as I'm talking about, is they're raising your credit limits if they can. Raising your credit limits supposedly carries with it the possibility of you changing your spending habits. Now, you give me a higher credit limit, all I'm doing is keeping that credit card in my little safe deposit box. And when I go on vacation and I want to do a business class flight or something, I'm still going to spend the exact same amount of money that I normally would have spent. And I'm still going to pay off my credit card at the end of the day so that I will suck up those reward points. I will go on my vacation to Bora Bora or wherever I'm going, Maldives, Seychelles, whatever it is, and I won't pay you a dime in interest. So y'all, these guys at MCU, y'all raised my credit limit. Thank you very much. But if you think that I'm going to be paying you a 16% interest, you're out of your fucking mind. It's not happening. I'm not paying you any interest at all. And that's what keeps the rich in the K-shaped recovery. The rich, at this point, they've pulled back their purchasing. They've pulled back their spending. When you go by the used car places around here, you go by the new car places, you see all these expensive cars that have been given back. Yoruses, Rolls Royces are just sitting out there. And you're like, wow, wait a minute. You brought that car here to trade it for a fucking Porsche? But when you realize what's happening, these rich people are not spending money. They are cutting back. See, when the rich go through a recession, the poor go through stagflation. When the rich people have to pull back and they have to stop their spending and they got to stop buying, they're holding on to their money. They're not paying for these ridiculous depreciating assets. Meanwhile, poor people are running out there with welfare checks, buying up Dodge Chargers and Challengers, buying gas guzzlers when fucking gas is hitting $5 a gallon. The thing about it is you have to pay close attention to the rich. When you watch the way they do things, it teaches you, they're always bears. They're not the ones spending the money. Now, I'll tell you what, these new money rich, these motherfuckers are out there, the ones you see on Instagram flexing every 5 minutes. And some of that's fake, but I will say these motherfuckers out there spending, these rappers and these Instagram influencers, those people, whatever money you give them, they'll spend that shit right up. And if they have a drug habit, they'll spend it twice as fast. But the real rich, the real wealthy, they're not getting into these depreciating assets. Anything they buy, they trying to make it work for them. They're trying to make money off of whatever they buy. I bet more rich people are rolling around in Honda Accords and Toyota Camrys than you'd ever imagine. You never understand how many of them are in those cars. New money rich is buying Mercedes and BMWs. The real rich, and you think about who are the real rich? The older people who've retired. They got nothing to do but collect their pensions and sitting back on their ass, just getting money, just coming in. Those real rich people in this country, they're not out there buying fucking McLarens and Lamborghinis. No. Those real rich people, especially the older ones, those people, look at Warren Buffett. The guy buys used Cadillacs, for God's sakes. He's got more money than God, and he's buying used Cadillacs. Just think about that for a second. Warren Buffett. He could go, if I was Warren Buffett right now, I could go out there right now. I could tell Bugatti, yeah, you're going to build me a 4-door Bugatti, and that shit, I want it plated with gold. And Bugatti would say, oh, well, Mr. Buffett, it's going to cost you $6 million. I'll be like, okay, here's $6 million. Build it now. Warren Buffett's buying used Cadillacs. Just think about that. Think about that. You see Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is not riding around a bunch of Escalades. Jeff Bezos, when I see him, he's in a fucking Suburban. I don't know if it's bulletproof, but for the most part, he's in these regular ass trucks being driven by his entourage. It's like if Jeff Bezos wanted to, he could have a bunch of gold-plated fucking Uruses. As he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. So that's the thing. These new money rich, these kids on YouTube, these motherfuckers blowing up all their money, burning it, just burning it. But that's just the difference between the rich and the poor, and the new money rich. There's a big difference. The mentality of flashing and flexing, the mentality is just, that's what keeps them poor. And then at the end of the day, they wonder, oh man, where'd all my money go? And then they ain't got no money left. And they wonder, where did it all go? Well, you wanted to invest in Shiba Inu. That's what happened. You invested in Shiba Inu. You lost all your goddamn money. So, as far as I know, it's looking like the entire market, for the most part, is in the red. I haven't, fortunately, been hurt much because you got to understand, I got into the market long enough ago where I was basically buying at not just bottoms, but I was buying when everything was just cheaper. So even when I lose money, most of my stocks pretty much just stay in the green. What else? Who is MO? Who is that? Altria cigarettes. Yeah, I think I'll end this little segment by just talking about some high dividend yield funds, just in case you're still setting up a portfolio. So there's a Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity ETF. They have a yield of 3.44%, and they're at $72.18 right now, close. And then there's Vanguard Extended Duration Treasury Index Fund. They have a yield of 3.42%. And as you can see, this is their progress over the year, but they're still paying their dividend. So apparently they're waiting for things to, to turn around, but God knows how long that's going to take. There is Enbridge Incorporated, and they have a dividend of 6.34%, $42.91 a share at this moment. BTI, British American Tobacco. One of the things you may notice if you buy into products like tobacco and alcohol, they tend to actually have very high dividends. British American Tobacco has a 7.21% dividend. Regardless what the market performance is, they're still paying their dividend. And I always push dividend stocks. Altria, another cigarettes group. Yeah, they took like a $10 or $15 loss over this period since March. However, they are still paying an 8.35% dividend. One of the things you got to understand about dividend stocks, when you get into dividend stocks, you're getting into those for the long term. You have to hold dividend stocks for a while, a year, 2 years, whatever. But if you're in dividend stocks, regardless what the price is, you're still getting that dividend payment. Now, you hope to buy it low so that when you get in low, and then once you're in, you start getting your dividend, and then the stock, maybe it will go up and appreciate, maybe it won't, but you hope to get it as low as possible. Now, when I got into these things, they were low, and that was years ago. So I know that there's a lot of people who are trying to get into the stock market now, and they're trying to set up. That's why I always share my dividend lists, and I always share dividend suggestions. The thing about it is, one thing you got to understand, when you put money into these things, these are not stocks that you're trying to flip. These are stocks that you're trying to hold for a long period of time. They may go up, they may go down. The bottom line is, as long as your money is sitting there, you're still getting your dividend per share. So these stocks are a little bit more expensive, but that's usually how it is when it comes to cigarettes, alcohol, tobacco. That's just what it is. So